Hello, music fans. You're watching my top 10 favorite prog rock albums of 2023. Now, some caveats before I jump into the list. This list isn't going to include anything that I count as prog metal because I'll make a separate video for my top 10 prog metal albums of 2023. Now, with that out of the way, let's jump in to number 10, which is Lalo and the Fish Who Wanted to Be King. This is the fourth album by this French band. I love everything they've done before this. This was also great. I do prefer their previous albums a bit, as they did have more of a metal edge to them, and every song on them is good. This is the softest album they've done, to the point where I would classify it just as progressive rock rather than progressive metal that you can find on their earlier albums. There's no harsh vocals or guitar chugging or blast beat drumming, or not even that much distortion. But if you're a fan of classic Yes material from the 70s, I think you'll like this. My favorite track on first listen was Forever Digital, the opening track. But the album also has a 14-minute prog epic called Amnesia 1916, which is great and touches on a lot of different styles in one song. And even though this is currently my least favorite album by Lalo, they're just such a great band, so this is still excellent. Not every song on here is great, though. I didn't love the fourth track, Is That a London Number, which was the single. It's okay, but it doesn't live up to the quality of the rest of the album for me. Number 9, Mirror to the Sky by Yes, the 23rd album by this British band. They're one of the most popular and best prog rock bands of all time. They rose to height during the classic 70s era of prog rock. I think it's a step up from their last two albums, The Quest and Heaven and Earth, for sure, but it's still not on the same level as their classic 70s albums. My favorite track on here is the title track, Mirror to the Sky, and second favorite would be the opener, Cut from the Stars. Number 8 is Enoch Root with Delusion. This is progressive rock with a bit of alternative influence thrown in there, like alternative indie rock. It's the debut album by this American band. If you're a fan of The Deer Hunter, I think you'll like this. The vocals sound similar. The guitar solo in Duplicity, which is my favorite track on the album, reminds me of Haken. It's just a great solo. Number 7, Tri-Top with Rise of Cassandra, another debut album. This is an Italian band, and even though they formed way back in 2006, it's their first album. It starts with a 13-minute title track and ends with a 24-minute prog epic called The Sacred Law of Retribution. It has some moments that almost sound like Gentle Giant, and a part that sounds freakishly similar to the end of Octavarium by Dream Theater at the end of their 24-minute epic. If you're a fan of Spock's Beard, Transatlantic, and Dream Theater, I think you'll like this. Number 6 is HMltd with The Worm. This is the second album by this band from the UK. Wasn't really sure whether this counted as prog rock, but it's very experimental and out there and artsy, so I count it. It's kind of like progressive art rock. It's a rock opera. It's got a bit of that post-punk vibe and experimental stuff thrown in. It's a loose concept album about a worm that is about to swallow England, but maybe it's about the main character not being able to distinguish between real and symbolic figures in his mind. So the worm could be mental illness or depression. If you're a fan of Black MIDI, I think you'll like this. My favorite tracks are the last 5 tracks, in particular the title track, The Worm. That's my favorite at the moment. And Past Life, Cinnamon Song, is my second favorite. Number 5 is Karmic Juggernaut with Phantasmagoria. This is more on the psychedelic side of progressive rock. It's the second album by this American band, a band I hadn't listened to until this year, but I was very pleasantly surprised with how great and quirky this album is. If you like the Mars Volta, King Crimson, Thank You Scientist, and Flummox, I think you'll like this. It sounds like a mix of those bands. Very cool percussion on the song Psycho. Their sound is really like the Mars Volta vocals with King Crimson instrumentals and a bunch of horns. They have a very comedic vibe to them as well, with their lyrics and spoken word interludes. Their craziness is reminiscent of Frank Zappa or the wackier works of Devin Townsend. And as amazing as this album is, I went back and checked out their debut, and I think it might even be better. So needless to say, this is a band that I will check out anything they release in the future. Number 4, Moon Safari with Himlabacken Volume 2. This is the 5th album by this Swedish band. This is prog rock for fans of Dream Theater, Yes, and Beach Boys. It sounds like a mix of those three bands. The first song, 1980X Heaven Hill, has a very 80s feel. The next song, Between the Devil and Me, is a great song, also has a bit of 80s in there. Teen Angel Meets the Apocalypse is an amazing prog epic, one of the best epics of the year. It goes into some more metal territory at parts, almost sounding like Dream Theater. The epic ends with the melody of London Bridge is falling down. Number 3 is District 97 with Stay for the Ending. This is progressive rock. It's got a little metal influence in it. I was like on the border of whether it should qualify for the progressive metal list, but I didn't think it was metal enough, so I put it on the rock list. But it's the 5th album by this American band, powerful female vocals by Leslie Hunt, who was an American Idol finalist. Great to hear someone from that world that usually focuses on simple pop music work in a prog band after being on American Idol. There's also a great male and female harmony going on a lot of the tracks, some chunky metal riffs from time to time, very eclectic music. The melodies are odd and atypical, but fun to listen to. My favorite track is Crossfaded. Number 2 is The Deer Hunter with Migrant Returned. This is progressive rock with indie rock influences. It's a reimagining of the 5th album by this great American band, and I already really love the original version. This is so similar to the deluxe version of Migrant that's on Spotify, but the songs are just in a different order, and they have some slight differences in recording, production, and arrangement. There are 3 new songs that I had never heard before: Middle Ground, Like Crazy, and Owls. But I found out those were previously released on the Migrations Annex EP, which I didn't listen to before 2023, even though I thought I heard everything by the Deer Hunter before. Everything on here is great, but I would prefer the band spend their time working on more new material rather than this. I thought we would have had their new album Sunya by now, and I would have rather they focus their energy on that. However, there's no denying this is an amazing prog rock album. The Deer Hunter Migrant Returned. My favorite track on here is probably the same as my favorite track on the original, which is Whisper. Sounds almost exactly the same on this version, but the main difference I noted is this version doesn't have the loud string part in the intro that the original version had. Then my number 1 prog rock album of 2023 is Bear Ghost with Jiminy. This is the 2nd album by this American band. The vocals remind me of Casey from The Deer Hunter, but the music here is wacky and fun. It has moments that are like funky polka, rockabilly blues that remind me of the playful spirit of Mr. Bungle. I listened to their first album shortly after listening to this one, and it's also great. So this is a new band for me to add to my growing list of favorites, and I'll make sure I follow everything they do going forward. Check out the song Big Town Banky Blaine's Rockabilly Barbecue for a preview of this album. And that's it for my 10 favorite prog rock albums of 2023. Stay tuned for my 10 favorite prog metal albums. Till next time, peace out.